Welcome everyone to the study session on May 10th, 2025. Welcome Mr. City Manager, and the first item is the AFS if I'm correct.
You are correct, sir.
And you want to frame that just a little bit for us before?
Well, this is just one of our spring traditions where our friends from AFS come in and share a little bit about the program and the experiences that our community members for the year have had visiting and studying abroad here in Independence. So with that, I'm going to welcome Bruce Lowry, who's so gracious to come each year and give us a little update on the program. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. As Zach said, I'm Bruce Lowry. I had the pleasure of being being helper for the city council, the city clerk for 39 years. So, and during that time, I got started with the procedure of introducing AFS to the Independence City Council and to the citizens of Independence. But we started by bringing students who were being hosted this year, and we've had a little difficulty getting going again better after COVID. So tonight, on behalf of the Independence and the Kansas City area AFS organization, I'm appearing before the City Council to advocate for encouraging others to experience my enthusiasm for this opportunity to get to know better those who live in another country by opening your homes to a teenager from another country for a school year. The AFS program began in 1947 when the volunteer ambulance drivers from World War II, who also had served during World War I, organized a student exchange program of hosting in the USA some children from French and German families who had sheltered American soldiers during the war. The AFS program grew from that, and in 1959, AFS was started in Independence with Phil and Lenore Weeks hosting a girl from Chile, and Independence has hosted over 437 students since then. Wow. That number is derived from information provided by Martha Ingram regarding the early years of Chrisman, and Janet Reed regarding Truman, Matt Mallinson, Kathy Vest, and Dan McGraw regarding Van Horn, and Dick and Ann Franklin regarding Fort Osage. We, like others, have had a little difficulty generating interest and involvement with our AFS program since the trauma of COVID. Up through 2020, we were hosting upwards of 10 students in our 4 high schools each year. But 2 is the most we have been able to find the hosting families for since then. And this year we were fortunate to have the Grafeo family who enjoyed hosting April from Austria for the first semester. So he has gone home, and we don't have any students in Independence at the present time. Through AFS, American families can host a student for a semester or a school year. An American family can send their teenager of 16 years of age or older for a summer, a semester, or a year to another country. AFS has a strong support system here in Kansas City, beginning with Kathy Hallberg, who is seated near the rear, who is just happens to be the daughter of Janet and Jerry Reed. And she is our Kansas City area chair, and we have a team of other registered volunteers on both sides of the state line. Our organization in Kansas City is the Kansas City metropolitan area that extends to south of Lewisburg. We have been as north as far as Gilman City in the past, and east out to Oak Grove, and all the school district areas in between within the Kansas City area. And we during that time have not been able to have any students in the Kansas City school district because they were not accredited. That is one of the requirements of the AFS program. They did get accredited, I think it was a year ago or something like that. So if we could find families, we could place students in the Kansas City School District as well. So now I want to introduce Steve Graffeo, who, along with his wife Medora and son McLean, hosted ACREL this year, and he's going to talk a little bit about what the experience was like this year hosting ACREL. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Graffeo, and I live at 12101 East 42nd Street, Independence. My wife and I and my son McLean were blessed to have the opportunity to host Akil Agobagabi from August to January of this year. Akil is 15 years old and is from Vienna, Austria, where he plays basketball and attended a French immersion high school. He is a trilingual, speaking German, French, and English fluently. While staying with us, he attended Truman High School with my son McLean, who's a senior. As soon as Akil arrived in August, he started working out with the Truman basketball team every morning at 6 a.m. And yes, I drove him. He was excited to make the JV basketball team in November and was able to play a few games in December before he departed January 9th. Before leaving for home, he purchased the latest Kobe Bryant basketball shoes and couldn't wait to show them off to his basketball team when he got back home. Since returning to his team in Vienna, he can tell that his basketball skills have improved due to being part of a Truman basketball program. He loved being part of the team here. Akil took some interesting courses while he was here: college prep English, college science classes, even though he was only 15 of age and a sophomore in his country. He stepped out of his comfort zone and even took acting classes. Akil said that he really enjoyed going to school mostly because it was a lot of fun with all the new people that he was introduced to. Mostly because of the extracurricular activities, not only playing basketball, but going to football games, soccer games, marching band competitions, choir concerts, and the homecoming dance. Akil also attended church with us at a high school retreat with McLean. He really enjoyed the services at church and loved being able to take up the offertory. Something really special was that Akil's parents came to visit him midway through his time here in October. They did all kinds of stuff with us and really enjoyed Joe's barbecue and church campfires and s'mores. Probably our biggest highlights were traveling over Christmas break to Medora's family farm. He'd never been to a farm before in Michigan, then skiing in Colorado and driving back through ice and snow that came after the holidays. They also went to a KU game at Island Fieldhouse, a college visit to Graceland University during a snowy day. He loved attending Royals baseball, Chiefs, Mizzou football. Again, we did just about everything with him while he was here and gave him a great experience. On New Year's Eve, Akil and McLean attended the Mavericks hockey game. Thank you to the City Council for the tickets. Akil loved attending his first hockey game. That is really great, a great way for the City Council to support the AFS program and introduce these students to something new. Finally, just a short list from my son when we asked him, what do you want to share from your perspective about the highlights? And this is from a high school senior. 1, driving to and from school together early in the morning. 2, having a little brother that he could mess around with that he didn't have. Supporting each other through sports and through basketball. 4, introducing him to activities that he hadn't seen before, like dressing up for spirit nights and preparing for homecoming in suits and ties that he'd never put on. And yes, I helped him with his tie. Driving all over the country to Michigan, Colorado, hanging out together with friends, introducing him to Culver's and Chick-fil-A. Thank you again for the tickets on New Year's Eve. It was fun to see Akil go to his first hockey game. Akil is hoping to return this summer to attend our church-sponsored camp, Sports Spectacular, hosted by Graceland University in Iowa. He's also hoping to attend a university here in the U.S. in a few years. Who knows, we've planted a few seeds. Akil's family has invited us to visit them sometime in Vienna, and we hope to go to Europe sometime soon. In closing, the AFS program is really great, and we're so grateful for the opportunity, experiences with Akil, and the relationships that we've developed with him and his parents. Thank you for the opportunity to share tonight.
Now I'd like to ask our area chair, Kathy Hallberg, to speak a little bit more about AFS.
Hello, and yes, I am Janet Reed's daughter. I think my dad used to talk to you when he walked his dogs through the neighborhood, actually. Anyway, I have been involved with AFS since I was a senior in high school. So that was 46 years ago. I did the math a few minutes ago. I was like, oh, geez. When I think about AFS, yeah, it's all of the things that they described and the facts but it's the big thing for me in my life is it's about the family elements of it. And you heard some of that in what Steve said, in that now he has a broader family. When Akil first got here, and I told Steve this story tonight, we have a camp, and I always ask the kids, what did you like when you first saw your host family's papers? What did you think? And he was like, I did not want to come to Independence. And I was like, really? It wasn't on your list? I mean, I can't imagine. I was like, did you even know where it was? He's like, no, we had to look it up. So then we had this whole conversation about there are things in places like Independence, like the Harry Truman Library and all of the history and how this was kind of a pivotal place for where people that settled the West and all. And I said, you can visit LA and Chicago and all the others, but the things that you will learn about the US are a lot of the things that Independence brings to the story. So I never got to ask Akil before he left, did he pick up some things that he did not think about when he was first coming that he now appreciates? So hopefully Steve can get those stories at some point. The influence on me, we hosted the first time, it was my mother's idea, we hosted a girl from Japan. And it was one of those, okay, great, I was gonna be sharing a bedroom with her. Okay, I had shared a bedroom with my sister, no big deal. But as the year went by, introducing Mary to some of the things like, we stuck her in the trunk of the car one time and snuck her into the drive-in, and we got home and she immediately told my mom, and I was not in good graces for a while. But it was silly things like that. But Mary and I maintained that contact, and the international influence that I think AFS began to have on me is what caused me to study international business. So I went to Thunderbird in Phoenix, worked for Hallmark International, traveled all over continental Europe, but it was all because I had shared a bedroom with a Japanese girl when I was 17. That wasn't on my list. Mary went on to become a translator. So she was translating for Nissan Motors executives in England, met her husband, who today is a Japanese ambassador. So they have lived in Sri Lanka and they are now stationed in Stockholm. So the most recent picture she sent me was her in a kimono, him in his tux and tails, and they were going to one of the Nobel Prize dinners. And when she was here, she wore the kimono in the Halloween parade when we used to have it at night and all that. And she and my mother had this huge argument over long underwear under your kimono. Like my mother's blocking the steps going, you're not leaving the house. So when Mary sent me this picture in Sweden in her kimono, I said, are you getting used to it? She's like, I did not have long underwear on. So that will be a joke for Mary and I forever. The next person that came along in our family was Lori. And Lori was she was a move, so she came to our house partway through the year. My daughter and I went to France 2 years ago to visit Lori and her family, and Lori had never told the story of how she ended up at our house to her daughter. So we were sitting there talking, and Lori has a granddaughter now who speaks almost no English, but she had a little friend with her at dinner. And Lori kind of smiled, and I said, what? And she said, the little girl just asked Eliana, who are these people? And Eliana said, that's my American cousin. Well, my daughter was 21, and she was so excited to be someone's American cousin. And when you can impress a 21-year-old, you're like, okay, not bad. So again, you get into that. They're coming to visit the end of April. So again, it's that family kind of thing. The next one, when I think about the effect that we've had on some of the other international students, my daughter and I hosted a Thai girl 7 years ago. Came from a teeny tiny town, very, very unsophisticated, really had to push her out of her comfort zone. Well, she went back to Thailand, went on to study in England, and is currently now living in England working for a large firm in marketing. A lot of that was the confidence she gained when she was here. The final one, I think, and this one to me is it symbolizes that a lot of the contacts you make with AFS and other countries, it's not just about the things we hear on the news, it's truly about the people that you get to know in those situations. So we had a girl here she went to Blue Springs, but she was from Gaza. And she'd gone home, and she and I were messaging because she was writing a brand statement for college entrance exams. And so we were doing all of this, and then that was in mid to late September, and then October 7th happened. And so then we lost contact with Rahad. So finally, able to find her and her family, started a GoFundMe, some people did here, managed to get her and her family to Egypt, and then managed to get Rahad to California. And so she came and visited her host family at Christmas. She's doing well, but those are the moments that you kind of go, wow, all because some kid wanted to attend an American high school. So those are the things. I think it goes far beyond the immediate education and learning and exposure. It's what seeds are you planting that you never know may come back to fruition, and the ripple effects that it would have. So it is very, very nice to be the only exchange program in Independence, and we realize that is a huge honor and luxury. So we continue to try to find families in the Independence District. So if anybody knows anybody, or if you're thinking about it, please do not hesitate to mention it to someone. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And we hope there'll be a little bit of a blurb about our being here in the Examiner the next few days.
No pressure.
If anyone wants to contact me, my email is my name, first and last name, at comcast.net. So I'd like to hear from anybody who is interested or anybody who knows somebody else who they think might be. You do not have to have a high school age student in the home, but it's helpful because as indicated by the testimony so far, they cannot drive. So they have to find transportation some way. Our first student hosting was in 1984, a 6-foot-tall German girl who played handball, and boy, we went out to the racquetball court and tried to learn how to play handball, and then when she got here, found out it's team handball in the United States, a volleyball-sized ball that you play with on a basketball-sized court, and you try to get the ball into a net like a hockey net. And so it's totally different than what we thought handball was. But we've hosted 2 other times since then, and one of the more interesting things is our second student was Christopher Brasington from Manchester, England, who you wouldn't think was all that exotic because he was from England, but he was determined not to become Americanized. So that was one of the things with him. And he was into music and arts, so he became degreed to be an English teacher and an art or a theater instructor. And he went to Singapore on a exchange program for post-college age people, and is still there teaching theater and English. But in the meantime, he got acquainted with and married a girl from Indian background, but she was living in Singapore, and my wife Marilyn went to their wedding, and she was the stand-in mother at the Indian style elaborate wedding ceremony. So we have visited all 3 of our students at least twice, and all 3 have been back to visit us. The idea of AFS is getting to know people one person at a time from another country, another culture, and hopefully bring about a step toward world peace in doing so. So appreciate the opportunity to speak at the council about the AFS program, and like I said, to let you know of my enthusiasm for the program, because I've been involved constantly since 1984, and currently the secretary of the Kansas City area. Are there any questions for any of us?
Any questions? Well, I just want to say thank you, Bruce, and I know you were the city clerk here both when Jared and I were employees here, if that's correct. And and we've actually been looking for somebody to fill in. That's why Sam's here today. So could we call you back from time to time, or is that too much pressure right in a meeting? You don't have to answer, think about it. I'm giving you an out,
I'm not sure it'd be quite the same picture as it was before 2008 when I retired.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for your
you.
work for AFS. All right, Mr. City Manager, next presentation up is liability insurance. Would you like to give that one a framing?
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask our Director of Finance, Melissa Cabrera, to come kick this presentation off.
Very good. Thank you, Melissa.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Next week, you will be asked to approve the city's annual general liability insurance program. You may remember last year that there were some pretty significant changes to it, and that we had Bob Charlesworth from Charlesworth Consulting come in and go through the changes with you in a presentation before the regular council meeting. We're fortunate again this year to have Mr. Charlesworth here to summarize this year's annual renewal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to him.
Good evening. Bob Charlesworth, the Vice President of Charlesworth Consulting. We're at 18th and Walnut in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. This is my 41st year in insurance consulting, and I don't know if it's me or what, but I tend to follow great stories like that, and we get right into insurance, so welcome to my world. The news last year was difficult. You may recall, I was here about an hour, actually. Going through some changes. Limits were cut in half, rates almost doubled, alternatives were almost non-existent. This year, we started earlier even, worked with the city's broker, Lockton Companies, located in Kansas City, Missouri. And with applications that were completed with our office, finance office, and all the departments, we went back out to the marketplace. To see what was available. Market changes all the time, so we wanted to see what was happening. Sarah Veit and I, who works with me, we went up to Minneapolis this year. The State's Risk Retention Group held their annual meeting. So we wanted to see firsthand how they were doing, their goals for the future, et cetera. So we did go up to at least participate in their conversations. It was a good meeting. We enjoyed our time up there to visit with fellow members of the Risk Retention Group. Came back and had a feeling the costs were going to be impactful to the city. So we put a rush on a lot of different things to see what alternatives were out there. We received an early indication that was enough to, I don't know how to say this, make you really upset, because it made me upset. So with due diligence, obviously we went back out with the city's help to get some alternatives at what we could find. And so the presentation here is really just kind of a highlight of what we presented last year with updated numbers. And the news, I think, is very good for the city's consideration. You may remember the policy is all-inclusive. It kind of is broken down in several different liability areas. Cyber liability is a separate program altogether. The city has a separate liability program. It does renew 4/1. We received the renewal. It's actually pretty flat. I think it's going to be part of the renewal packet next week. It's about $43,000 in premium for a 3-man limit. So that's already taken care of, and we keep that separate because they're very special policies. So this one here, we're going to focus on really some key coverages. As you can see here, general liability. This is the typical premises and operations liability. People get hurt on city premises, or you have a mower that slings a rock and hits somebody or breaks a car window, whatever. This is liability coverage that was designed to protect that, bodily injury and property damage. The next one is employment practices. This is always a difficult one. The termination of employees and hiring of employees, promotion of employees or whatever. These are where the allegations come down into play. This is still a very difficult risk to underwrite and insure. As you can see, the negligent evaluations, wrongful retaliations, et cetera, is covered under this program. Very vital, important piece of coverage to maintain. The next two, first one is law enforcement liability. Obviously, with the use of law enforcement officers, they get in tough situations pretty quickly. They're trained well. The policies and procedures are looked at by the underwriters. They were favorable. So any allegations of false arrests, et cetera, are handled under this policy. The other one is public officials, things that are filed in federal court, discriminatory allegations, et cetera. This could include allegations against city council people. So this is where that would come into play. The final liability piece is the auto liability. Obviously, the ownership, maintenance, or use of a vehicle has some statutory provisions, and that is obviously for bodily injury and property damage caused by any accident owned, rented, or borrowed by the city. So essentially, it's an all-encompassing program is what we've been looking at and have been for several years. This little quick slide here is an overview of the current liability coverage. You may recall, and the next slide will show this, but the policy limit is $5 million. It was down from $10 million because of cost. The self-insured retention went from $250,000 up to $1 million. So every occurrence claim that came up, the first $1 million is the city's responsibility. Give you a little heads up, nobody was willing to come down off of that. Policy, again, it includes all the liability coverages that we just talked about. So it's an all-inclusive policy where essentially the city is managing their claims internally. We have a claims system that our office works with. We work with an independent third-party administrator, Thomas McGee, on liability claims, mostly bodily injury type allegations. And so we're very involved in the day-to-day allegations that may come through the pipeline. But most of those claims are handled internally. I know Jeremy and his staff are very intricately involved in some of those allegations for how we utilize outside counsel. And the outside counsel has been very good. And states, since the city, has $1 million retention, they're pretty lenient about who you use as outside counsel. So that's been very good. It's been a good working relationship on that piece of it. This is, sorry for the cramming so much in there, but I want to kind of give a history for those that maybe were not here last year of the trend of the liability program and the goals of when we first went with states, we the city, was they required a minimum of a $250,000 retention. Think of it as a deductible, if you will. And they allowed us to ease into that. And so we did that without a problem. And then last year they says, I tell you what, we're going to change not only the pricing but also the limits. And so the $1 million limit was, I have to go back and look. Yeah, to say that the $10 million limit with a $1 million retention was a little over $1 million. So it was like $1 million with a $1 million deductible for a $10 million limit. It just kind of seemed difficult to swallow. The $10 million limit was the preference if we could. We have some contractual issues, mostly with IPL, that we have to watch those liability limits. And one this year was difficult to negotiate down to the $5 million limit. I will say that. It took us quite a bit of work with outside legal to get that taken care of. But in the marketing of this year, we received an option from Obsidian, which is an A- rated company. So it's a very strongly rated company. They also gave us a 5 and a 10 million limit. I'm going to go back to the next page right here, which are the two options that they have. And I don't know if I can make that bigger or not for you. But essentially, we have a renewal, as you can see, from states. They went from $835,000. They wanted almost $1.4 million to remain at at a $5 million limit with a $1 million retention. Obviously, when we went out to the market with all the information that we were able to give them, Obsidian came in and says, we'll do it for essentially 608, or if you want to go back to the 10 million limit, 875, which is about 5% over what the city is currently funding on their $5 million limit. So we were pleased with this news. Now, as an option, we did ask another carrier, Aegis, AEGIS, to look at just a liability program for IPL. In short, one of the discussions last year was, what happens this year if we get an ugly renewal or no options at all? Do we just self-fund and just, not buy insurance? And that's difficult with some of these agreements with IPL and others. So we went out and looked for an option for that. Aegis did give us an indication, and it was about the renewal premium of the prior years. It was, they felt it was going to be closer to $800,000 just for liability for IPL alone, which I thought was ludicrous. When I got to looking at it closer, I think the underwriter's concern was, are we going to get roped into other things within the city, and can we put enough exclusions in the policy? Are we accidentally giving coverage back where we don't want coverage to be? And that is a valid concern, I will admit that. So we were very pleased with this option that Lockton was able to secure for the city. And based on that information, in discussion with city management and some of the department directors, we think it's prime time to go back to the $10 million limit that the city currently maintained for years. Keep the self-insured retention at the $1 million, that way that working layer, if you want to call that a working layer, it's a high working layer, but at least the city has control over those smaller claims and how they're handled and how they're adjusted and how they're settled. There's no more co-insurance, which states would require. And if this is a 5% premium increase over the current budgeting amount at half the limit. So we were pretty pleased with this option for the city's consideration. Goals moving forward, again, we monitor this all the time regarding, do we pull law enforcement out or public official risk out, employment practices risk, do we pull that out and not buy it? Well, we're not finding much premium savings doing that. It really helps to have one excess carrier covering the entire gamut of the liability risk. And so we think it's a good risk management program. We continue to work with HR on policies and procedures, great defense programs that we've gotten in place. We're working diligently. I know Jeremy and his team are regarding addressing claims as quickly as possible and getting them closed if the city is responsible for them. And that way, that gets taken care of and off the books. So that's the summary. I didn't want to get too, this is better news than what we had last year, if you may recall. In summary, what we're going to be recommending next week is to secure the $10 million limit with a minimum retention at the $835,000 annual premium contribution. Now, I'm happy to answer any question you have.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glad to have you back. Thank you. I always learn something. I assume the $1 million is total, not by occurrence. It's the absolute amount is the amount that we have to surmount.
That's per occurrence.
Per occurrence.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So it's not just a one-time $1 million and then that's all you have to fund. No, it is not that.
Okay.
Now, the $10 million aggregate is the most the policy will pay in a given year.
So the $1 million is occurrence and the
Correct.
$10 million is aggregate.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah. It's
less than
important to know.
optimal.
That's what we have now.
Okay.
And that's
Yes.
with the exception of the increase back to 10 million, that's what we have had.
Okay.
Right.
My second question really is to the city manager. I don't believe that we have an office for risk mitigation. Is that?
We have a very disjointed approach. We have two departments that have their own risk management coordinators, but we are not taking a citywide approach to that historically.
So no one ever said insurance is going to get cheaper. So this is going to continue to be a difficult issue for the city. And as you're seeing more climate change claims, et cetera, the broad insurance market is changing what it's requiring and its ability to underwrite. So we're seeing providers drop out in all kinds of areas. And you wouldn't think that would have rolled through to the middle of the country, but it definitely does because these are large corporate entities. I am hoping that we will take a good look at how we are approaching that because a thoughtful approach to risk mitigation is going to be as important as the good work that you do in brokerage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Mr. Charlesworth, just a couple of questions relative to the long-term approach of our risk management program. I guess the question really is, are there things that from from your perspective as our consultant in this regard, that you think we could do for the big picture to be able to help control these as the years go along, to control these costs?
One of the things I think that our firm has brought to the city is that, being an outside firm, we find departments are pretty receptive to visiting with us about ideas or things that they're doing internally. We've been pretty pleased with that, and they've been very responsive to us with questions and stuff. I think that diligence needs to continue even greater as things happen. I'm going to pick on a group of people, and it's not to be picking. It's across the nation. Law enforcement allegations are getting rampant. And you have to be very diligent about your policies and procedures and the training. And I think that's just not the City of Independence. I mean, it's all law enforcement departments that we work with. And I think that's going to be a challenge going forward. So if you look at the breakdown of allegations and you look at the not just Independence, but we represent, I've worked with probably over 50 public entities in my career, probably closer to 100. But if you look at all the allegations that we've seen and how things have transpired, the best defense obviously is a good offense of having followed policies, procedures, regardless of which department you're in. But with this city, we don't see a lot of claims with IPL. We don't see a lot of claims in other departments, streets, roads, not really. Parks, very few. I mean, the city has done really well over the years, but every now and then, things happen. And that's why that is that way. Now, I will say this, in the future, as this continues to develop, we're going to have a conversation, if I'm still here, that at what point you're going to say, we're done spending $1 million a year on something, when we can just add, we already addressed the budget regarding claims and budgeting and everything. Let's take the next step and say, we're not doing this any longer. We're going to address it internally as a city and have a risk management fund, which we have budgets for, but that's going to have to be beefed up a little bit and then set a goal for what the funding level should be at some point. I think that's the direction of this city and the insurance marketplace, because it's going to dictate it one day. And you may recall last year, the question was, do we even buy it anymore? Is it worth it? And you're not the only city having these discussions and feelings. It's getting to the point for a lot of them that says, we can no longer do this. So I think that, to me, I think internally, make sure the departments are very aware of their risk management needs, their claims activity, and how can we mitigate claims? If something happens, are the processes in place to report it, address it? And that's what we do at our firm. It gets reported, we address it, and we get it handled. It doesn't mean, they get settled, because sometimes they're not city's fault. You have some immunity provisions available to you. So we have to make sure all those are addressed going forward.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. The other question really is relative to budget and, the way that we, reserve for these, potential expenses. At a $1 million self-insured retention, that's a big chunk, and that could hit us multiple times a year, and they're only going to pay, 10 million, right, this year, 5 million, next year, 10 million if we approve this. Do you, in your opinion, are we adequately reserving funds in our budget for potential risk that we have?
I just finished the budget draft on Friday, in fact. Sent it over to Melissa. She's probably going blind by all the spreadsheets I put together for her. I do predictive modeling that I've developed myself. Historically, the budget has been about spot on. I will say for the current year, it is not. Things happened that were just not great. And so I think the going forward, I mean, the budget increase is fairly significant for risk management for next year that I proposed. I'm not saying 100%. I'm saying instead of 15, it's probably going to be closer to 25. So if you look at the process of how claims are filed, how they're litigated, how they're closed, and that process and time, I mean, it's spread out over time. So it's not like if something happens and it's just artificially, if it's $1 million claim, you just don't write a check for $1 million today. It doesn't happen. But we do use reserves, and our independent third-party administrator does give us guidance, the city guidance, as to what those amounts are. And so when we look at the claim reports and see those numbers, I can do some predictive modeling as to what I think that may look like going forward and when it might be paid.
All right, I think that's what I have at this point. Thank you.
Okay. I know that was kind of a roundabout answer, but
No, I
it's the
appreciate
best I can
that.
give you.
Yeah.
Anyone else other questions? One of the things that I'd be interested in is, do you have a history of, say, the last 5 or 10 years of what claims insurance companies have paid for the City of Independence regarding liability insurance, and how much we've paid as far as the SIR, and how much the total claims have been?
I do have that claim run. I don't have it in front of me.
I understand. Is that possible, Mr. City Manager, that I get a claim run, I would say for the last 10 years, to get a sense of what our transaction claims have been?
I don't know if I can go back that far. I've
far do
only
you think
been
you can
with
go
the
back?
city about 5.5.
Yeah, 5 years would be good. If that's what you've got, we don't want
I can do it. I mean, I think we can get it since the city's been with State's Risk Retention Group. The prior carrier does not share that data, not even with me. So
Okay.
I'd have to
So
ask.
it'd have to
I
be something,
don't
if
know.
we kept it internally, it'd be something that we would possibly have, that we would show our claims we paid.
Yeah, I think run it through city attorney for that confidential basis is going to be important.
Yeah, so I would like to see the 5 years claims history, because that gives us a sense of kind of what's happening and what's going on. The other thing is, too, our self-insured retention level this last year is $250,000, going to be increased to $1 million. How many times did we hit the $250,000 this year on any claims?
I don't have that number in front of me, but it wasn't a lot.
Okay. But could you give me that too on the self-insured
Well, sure.
with that total
Sure.
number?
Mayor, just to clarify, our current SAR is $1 million with states.
Okay.
So we're keeping it at $1 million. So that actually, again, that's still high. Admittedly.
Sure. Yeah,
But
no,
it is
I'm
staying
just trying to
at $1 million.
understand, I'm just asking for a sense of understanding. I'm not an expert on this. I want to know, kind of what our liability losses have been, and things like that.
Right.
And, kind of a sense of what are the biggest risk areas, and then what are that. So if we get 5 years of claims, and then the SIRs that we've had to pay every year on that, and then kind of the issue that was addressed there, I think that would be important for us to get a sense of that history on it.
Right.
If we could go back to slide on page 5, please. And it's the employment practices liability.
Oh, the discussion.
Yeah, just the list of those.
Yes.
I'm not asking for this in regards to the City of Independence itself, but I am asking this with regards to the clients that you work with. What are the biggest risk areas, so say the top 3 to 5 risk areas there that you would see? Or if you need to go back when we get this other information about the 5 years claims and then also the SIRs, I'd like to see what the biggest areas are from other cities. And then how do we match with that in regards to their risk and overall and the risk that our city faces, just from a sense of averages and a sense of perspective in that regard.
I could pull some of that information.
Well, let me ask you this. Is that a fair question?
It's a fair question. I can look at claims that I see from other clients. Usually there's always an allegation of wrongful termination. Then the next one is probably not promoting, that they felt that they should have been promoted, overlooked or whatever. Those are probably the 2 most prevalent that I see. After that, I think, insurance is built on the law of large numbers, and if you get a smaller group, it's one here, one there, one there, so it really doesn't catch your eye very quickly. But those 2 are probably the most that I would probably see in the last probably 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to, get a sense of that, because when you talked about us taking, the reason I'm asking this question is you said one of the things that we need to do is take a game plan and kind of look at, okay, how do we mitigate the risk and what are our major risks and what are the concerns that we have? And so I would see it as a training issue for, our supervisors, our managers to say, hey, these are the issues. So, but if you like, I can, with the city manager's permission, and I can give you a call tomorrow and just say, hey, these are the questions I asked, and what are your thoughts? So,
yeah, well, the 5 years of information I have. I mean, I pull that together when I pull the budget together. So
Okay.
that's not hard to find at all.
Okay.
The other one, I'd have to do a little more. I mean, I can pull the cities, obviously, but I'd have to pull the other clients that I've got to see if there's any trend there other than what the 2 I've just told you.
Right. I mean, there would be the top 3 probably come off your top of your head because you deal with those so much and have to deal with the claim side of it. There you go.
Yeah.
With regards to how does the co-insurance of 0% above the retention, benefit or harm the city?
It actually benefits the city right now. You'd have to pay the $1 million, and then you're on the hook for the next 10% of the next anything above that. There is no limit on that.
Okay.
And so eliminating that, obviously, the million is still the retention is the city's responsibility,
Right.
but the carrier is responsible for the claim beyond that.
Okay.
One of the benefits why they implemented it, and this was one of the questions I had when we met with them, is the purpose of that was to keep the member involved in the claim going forward and trying to get it settled because it's coming out of your pocket as well. That's why it was there.
Okay. And you mentioned that we may, in fact, down the road look at self-insurance perspective. So what are some steps that we would need to take prior to that in order to make sure that we are able to do self-funding? I know there's a number of cities our size that are self-funded with regards to that for a whole host of reasons. So, could you help us make that progression in that process going forward?
Yeah, I think we're doing that now. I think there will be a point where the city says we're no longer going to buy this.
Okay.
The process of that originally is just like what was designed with states, starting at a lower retention of 150, going to 200 to 250, and eventually our recommendation was to keep stepping that forward, not jumping to $1 million in 1 year. That was forced upon the city, but that was going to be the ultimate goal anyway for the City of Independence. At what point do you say enough is enough? At this point, standing here, I can't tell you what that magical number would be, but I am saying that if you would remain with states and they want $1.4 million with $1 million retention, I'd probably have to say, for a $5 million limit, I'm going to have to say no. Oh, by the way, you're there now, and they pretty much forced your hand to do that. I'd rather do it methodically.
It's just simply doing the math. Let's say it's at 1.5 is the amount, and then $800,000, assuming it would stay that, and probably wouldn't. It'd probably be $1 million or more than that at least. You're already halfway to the premium of the $5 million premium. You already paid that.
Yeah,
It'd
exactly.
be equivalent to, if I'm thinking off the top of my head, if you had a $50,000 car, you're paying $25,000 a year for liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't even cover comprehensive insurance on that particular car. If my analogy is correct.
Your analogy is correct. In fact, people in Florida are doing that right now in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting to the point now where that cost for that wind, hail, or named storm is getting so high, and the deductible is so high. It's getting to the point is, why am I buying it? Well, if you've got a mortgage, you will buy it. But if you don't, many are saying, you know what, I'm going to take the risk.
Right. Yep. And I have some friends that have actually had that conversation in Florida. Yeah. So very, very good. I just like to follow up on the 5 years claims and then the SIRs to kind of get a sense of where we're at. Anybody else, any other questions?
Just making sure that we would get the same information.
That's a great point. If
Yes,
you
certainly.
could,
We'll make sure that happens.
yeah,
I'll
don't
run
give
that
it to
through
me,
Jeremy.
Don't give it to me. Give it to the city manager, so
Yeah.
we can go from there.
It's fine.
So, excellent point, excellent question. Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Other questions? All right. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much for that information. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Very, very good. Thank you. That brings us on to the topic that we've talked a number of times, Mr. City Manager, is Rental Ready Program. And do you have anything you'd like to frame this up on?
Just very quickly, Mayor, as you referenced, Council's had in-depth conversations the last several months leading up to the adoption of new program requirements in City Code. We did understand, though, that the Council, following the adoption of the code requirements, wanted to talk about how the program is enforced and administered. So staff has spent some time researching this. We wanted to provide you with an update on that tonight and our perspective relative to a recommendation for moving forward as well. So I will turn it over to our Community Development Director, Tom Scannell.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. As City Manager mentioned, my name is Tom Scannell. I'm the Community Development Director. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to seek direction on whether the rental ready inspections should be performed by the city, that's in-house inspections, or by the qualified housing inspectors, which is our current process and has been the current process since Rental Ready had started back in 2016. So a little bit about our current inspectors. Landlords can choose from 6 different companies. Those 6 companies have a total of 11 employees. Some are part-time or as needed. Those employees, their qualifications include master electrician, home builder, general contractor, ASHI home inspector, and a certified home inspector. The inspection companies, they offer their services throughout the week. There is one firm that only inspects Monday through Friday with limited hours. And it's worth noting that this firm performed the least number of rental-ready inspections. The rest of the firms inspect 6 to 7 days a week with expanded hours into the evening to make it convenient for both the landlord as well as the tenant. Here's some information on kind of our current number of rental units. All of this, these numbers were pulled from the census. So we have approximately 10,608 rental units each year that would be up for inspection under the Rental Ready program. Keep in mind the Rental Ready program, the units have to be inspected every other year. The ordinance does exempt certain types of units. Those units are those that already receive annual housing inspections via HUD. So those would be the housing authority, tenants who have housing choice vouchers, those that receive low-income housing tax credits, those types of things. So you subtract those units from the pool of units that need to be inspected each year, and the result is just under 8,800 units that need to be inspected each year. Or that works out to, on average, about 731 units must pass inspection each month. So staff used those numbers to put together what we feel, what our recommendation is, the number of inspectors that would be needed to meet that workload. And our number is 8 inspectors. As part of that, you would need to have a supervisor as well as an administrative assistant to coordinate everything. The estimated total annual cost for that in that first year, so this will include the salary and benefits, the vehicles, computers, telephones, all those things, is approximately $977,000. When Rental Ready was being discussed back in 2014 and 2015, a lot of internal discussions on how should the inspections be performed. At that time, it was kind of a ping pong ball. It was bounced all around. But there was an estimate that someone had put together that it was around $1 million with around 8 employees, vehicles, computers, all that stuff. To also put this into comparison, our code enforcement program, which has 8 inspectors, 1 supervisor, and an admin, they perform approximately 11,500 inspections on an annual basis. Now those inspections are, you drive up to the property, perform the inspection on the outside, versus Rental Ready, where the inspectors are going inside the property and spending 15 to 20 minutes per unit to make sure that the unit has passed each and every one of the 16 items that are on that inspection list. That program is about a $1.1 million program. So you can see we're in the right ballpark for this in-house inspections. Some of the challenges that we see with bringing the Rental Ready inspections in-house. Attracting and retaining employees is our number one fear. We have had a very challenging time with filling our inspector position, which over the last couple years seemed to have experienced a great deal of changeover, and it's taking longer and longer to fill that position, to find a qualified individual, and that's for one position. The hours of operation, we tend to be in Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 operation. What further restricts that is when you consider the holidays. The city gets 12 of those, as well as the sick and vacation time. That all has an impact on how many inspections those inspectors could do each day, each week, each month. The fear is if we can't complete those inspections on time, the landlord can't get his business license or can't renew his business license on time. And then that creates a further bottleneck and issues as we continue to go throughout the year. I wanted to provide a little bit of a comparison showing the current fees, the fees charged by the qualified housing inspector, as well as what the in-house proposed fees would be. Current fees, the initial inspection is $50. The reinspection fee is is $30. It has been that way since 2016. A lot has changed since 2016. Costs have gone up across the board since then. Under the new, for the qualified housing inspectors, city's looking to increase that to $100 for that initial fee and $60 for that re-inspection fee, so essentially doubling those. When you look at the in-house proposal to cover our costs, those inspection fees are going to have to be $125 a piece. To put that in perspective, when you look at the example in the lower part of that table, you see that the in-house inspection cost per unit per month could be anywhere from a little over $5 to just under $7 per month per tenant. Under the qualified housing inspector costs, it's a little over $4 and stays below $5 if there's numerous re-inspections. And to put that into comparison, our current fees, going back to 2016, the city at that time estimated that the annual cost per unit per tenant would be around $2. So staff's recommendation is to use the qualified housing inspectors. The biggest challenge that we're going to have is the hiring and retaining of the inspectors. Scheduling the inspections is another challenge. We may have everything all lined up with the landlord, property manager, tenants, and then there's a hiccup along the way and the city gets out there and something happens and we can't perform that inspection that day. The city is slower to react than what the third party would be. That then creates difficulty in completing the inspections on a timely basis. And lastly, the cost of the program, both from the city standpoint as well as the impacts to the tenants. We want to have this as cost efficient as possible, yet still meet the standards that the city and the tenants expect. So our next steps, if the council provides direction to use the qualified housing inspectors, staff would select those firms, train the inspectors in accordance with the adopted ordinance. However, if council provides direction to perform the inspections in-house, we would continue to utilize the inspectors probably through the end of this calendar year, so probably the end of December. Work with the city manager to budget those costs in the fiscal year 25-26 budget for the staffing, the vehicles, computers, phones, and then over the next several months, hire and train staff with the goal of having the city perform those beginning on January 1 of 2026. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Please proceed.
So, Mr. Scannell, appreciate the analysis on this. I think this is more of an observation at this point based on what I'm seeing here. I mean, your plan would have been to, as you work with the current inspectors, would be to train, because of the new changes we had that we made earlier in the year, would be to train the folks with the new ordinance and the new guidelines that we're going to be doing, correct?
Correct. So with the recent changes to the rental-ready ordinance. The city issued an RFQ. We felt that we changed enough of the program. We wanted to make sure that those prior qualified housing inspectors still wanted to participate in that program, and allows us to recertify them, but also to make sure that they understand the new inspection requirements. And then once we're select those firms, as you mentioned, we will work with them, train them to ensure that all of the inspection companies are performing the inspections the same way and are looking for the same thing, so that there's consistency across the board.
Okay. So, my reaction to this information, which is really helpful, it's what I was looking for relative to where we go, from here. I appreciate your work on this. There's a number of issues that you've raised, given, trying to hire people and staff and to schedule, as a landlord myself, I've done this done inspections on weekends and evenings, and, that's not uncommon to try to work with a tenant schedule and to try to, facilitate all of that. I'm comfortable with moving forward with staff's recommendation. That's just my opinion. I'm one of 7, but that's my opinion at this point. You've raised important issues, and I think the issues that you've raised are the right issues, and so I'm comfortable moving forward that way. That's just my opinion.
Anyone else? Other further questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Scannell, a couple of things. You said you issued the RFQ. Did you end up with new people who wanted to come into the program, other than just the 6 who have participated in the past?
So that recently closed, and we had a total of 4 firms, and they are repeat firms.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers the question.
And you feel like 4 firms is adequate to cover the number of rentals we have?
We just got that information. We're gonna process that and see if we feel that that's enough. I do remember way back from 2016 and 17, when we were trying to fill those firms, we did go out numerous times to get 6 firms at that time. So we'll take a look at that, see what the responses are, and then see if they meet the qualifications. Because if 4 firms turned in the application, but some may not have the qualifications, we need to verify that and may need to find additional firms.
Thank you. I know we still have a couple of outstanding issues that I know you're working on, but just as a reminder for us, a good process for how we inspect shared amenities in a place that has a shared boiler or a shared air conditioner, things like that. Since we have set it up so that the inspectors will share their inspection with us, that does also give us the opportunity to do an audit. If we get the form that says everything passed, picking a couple of those randomly and having ComDev go out and take a look at those and make sure that what they actually said and what we have on paper match up.
That is key, yes. Making that change to have the inspection companies submit all of their inspections, whether it's a pass or a fail. We will have that information so we can perform that audit. I also want to point out the firms that we select as part of this RFQ, they have a duty to both the city and the Rental Ready program to perform that in how we expect them to. And if they don't, they can and will be removed from the inspection process.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have further questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
So you talked about if we were to bring this in-house and hire our own inspectors, that they could only work Monday through Friday. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So within the personnel policies as well as the collective bargaining units, there are restrictions on the hours of work. If you deviate too far from that, the bargaining unit may or may not accept those. And then there's things with overtime, which then increase the cost. As you increase your salary and benefits, you're then increasing the cost of the program, which ultimately are going to be passed on to the tenants. So those were all things that we looked at as part of this in order to try to strike that sweet zone to try to be as cost effective both to the city as well as to the tenants.
And what about hiring part-time employees?
That is, are you talking for the city?
Yeah, I mean, is that a possibility?
That ultimately is. With that, you may save a little bit on benefits. However, what you're going to or could potentially have is increased costs in vehicles, computer licenses, computers, phones, all of those things. We'd have to look at to see what the savings are with that. But given the amount of units that we have, we feel it's 8 full-time employees. Keep in mind that with the 16 rental-ready inspection items, each one of those may have, in the past, have taken 10 to 15 minutes. They're now going to be 20 to 30 minutes per unit because they're looking at significantly more items.
So going forward, if we continue to use private companies, can you talk again about how we're going to make sure they're doing a good job?
So as part of the recent changes to the rental-ready ordinance, the inspectors have to submit each and every inspection. The city can then look at that, perform an audit. If we see, hey, that building was recently tagged dangerous, why is now it passing the rental-ready inspection? We can analyze that and also just on a periodic basis spot check. If we start to get complaints from a tenant or a landlord about an inspection company going, hey, they were looking at this really isn't part of the program, we could then go back and spot check those as well as continue to monitor that inspection company.
And then also going forward, how soon could we do an audit of the program, of the inspection program? What would make sense?
Ideally, I think you would want to wait at least a year, see what you gather in that year. Keep in mind that the new inspection items go into effect May 1st, so I would probably suggest at least a year from that date.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Other further questions? Please proceed.
Are there any issues with the 11 employees meeting the average daily inspections?
I have not heard any. I think where some of the issue stems from, and we corrected this in the ordinance, is with the landlords paying for those inspections after they were done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No further questions? Excellent analysis, excellent presentation. I appreciate it very much, so thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, Mr. City Manager, I think brings us to our last item on the agenda, the GO bond question number 2, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir. Since the time that the council adopted the ordinance calling for our election in December, we've tried to use our study sessions to highlight the different portions of the general obligation bond questions so the community's aware of these issues. Tonight is the final such presentation, which is bridges. So the Deputy City Manager, Lisa Reynolds, is here to give that overview for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you letting me come talk to you again about question 2. A few weeks ago, we spoke about streets and sidewalk components of this question. Just again, question 2 is a $55 million question in total, $30 million dedicated to overlay and full and partial depth repair, $10 million dedicated to sidewalks or to schools, and that final $15 million bucket in this question dedicated to bridges. Just to highlight the need overall, we have 68 bridges in our inventory in the City of Independence. 5.5 of those are currently closed. 2 of the closed bridges, we are moving forward with repairs thanks to ARPA funding, but the ARPA funding alone doesn't cover the full cost of either of those repairs. So additional funding is needed. And in the next 3 to 5 years, we've got at least 3, if not 4 or 5 bridges that will be facing the same closures if we don't find funds to take care of those. I do want to also mention, in addition to the 68 bridges, we have over 600 storm culverts in the city, but 21 of them are large scale enough that the average person would deem them bridges instead of culverts. So they're different and then they're not inspected by MoDOT like the rest of our bridge inventory is. But again, there was a $3 million component as part of the bridge package that would be dedicated to culverts. There is no grant funding currently available. We've put in repeatedly for the very few grant programs that exist for bridges. We have some hope of funds coming for the Kentucky Bridge over Rock Creek, but nothing guaranteed. So while we continue to apply, there's no current grant funding available for those projects. And some of the challenges that we face with bridge repairs, or just the bridge situation in general, is that conditions can change very quickly. The Chrysler Bridge that was most recently shut down, there was no plan to shut that down this year. We just, in the last month or so, completed our inspections with MoDOT, and the determination was made at the time of that inspection to go ahead and close the 1 lane of the Chrysler Bridge. And I say conditions change quickly. And I'll show you the list. We've always talked about 14 bridges being named in part of this package.
Thank you.
This is now our list of bridges of interest, and you can see it's up to 18 already. And I apologize for not including this in the presentation, but these maps never really view well, so easier to just have it in your hands. So you can see they're not only scattered all through town, but just since we've started talking about GeoBond, the list has grown from 14 to 18. And again, these are all bridges, not including the culvert component. Another issue that we've seen, we have bid out specifically the Chrysler Avenue Bridge for repairs and gotten 0 response. It appears that most of our bridge projects packaged by themselves aren't really a big enough project to interest most contractors. So the goal then would be to put these bridges out a few at a time. That's kind of the limiting factor, is our ability to appropriately inspect the projects as the repairs are underway. So we don't want to package them one at a time. We're trying to package larger groups together so we hopefully get more interest in the bid responses. And then of course the challenge just continues to be that there's, again, no dedicated funding source to bridges. Yes, it is an allowable use of the transportation sales tax to repair bridges, culverts. Again, you've seen this slide before. Just that language is lifted straight from the bond language for the allowable uses of the transportation sales tax. But again, that tax brings in roughly $12 million a year. And you can see from the breakdown here, we're at $11.75 million. And that the parts that aren't listed here would be 6 staff members and materials, salt, patching materials and things, just operating supplies and things like that, that go to the maintenance of the roadways and the actual work performed. So nearly $5 million in pavement maintenance operations, that would be overlay and seals, almost $2 million in annual debt service, and then $5 million for our matching grant funds for the various federally funded grant projects that we have. So, as promised, list of 14 bridges. These are the ones that we have repeatedly talked about. This list has been out there, but again, it's been added to very recently, and that list will continue to grow. And again, just highlighting, this is just the bridge component. We've got 21 culverts in addition. And for all of you that remember just this last summer going into fall when the Bunchu culvert failed, when culverts collapse, they collapse quickly and catastrophically, usually taking at least a lane of traffic of the roadway with them. So any of these that we can address, obviously, we can look at it in an inspection and think it should be fine for the year, and then weather and the ground shifts, and we lose a lane of a street. So we would just be targeting, again, those culverts with that anticipated $3 million of the 15. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Excellent job. Thank you. Any questions? This question's probably been asked before, so are we going to work on, all the bridges at once, or are they prioritized, or?
So we will attack the ones that are closed. So on this list, that's Heidelberger, both the Kentucky Avenue bridges, the Lexington, and then the Chrysler Bridge. They're already actively closed. We're working on 2 of them. They're already in design and moving forward, but those would be our priorities. And then working this list, we will prioritize based on traffic counts and also distance or time required to detour around that bridge. Got to account for emergency response and things like that, and also just how many people are affected by the closure.
Right. So, yeah, thank you for that, because it helps me understand the formula, because there have been people who have asked me that, so thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Other questions? Very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like the big font, and I love the, because this would be hard to see.
It's easier
and this
for me
made it
to
much
see,
easier,
so I figure it's easier for everybody. Maybe.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else further comments? And I think Councilmember McCandless would like a moment of personal privilege, if I am correct.
Thank you. When we serve on the city council, we do that willingly and with joy for our community, but our families come along for the ride, whether they want to or not. And so I would just like to give a shout out to my colleague here who is spending her anniversary with us. So congratulations on your anniversary, and our appreciation to your husband for loaning you to us this evening.
Very good. And would you like to say anything?
We celebrated Saturday night.
Okay.
So it's fine. I mean, it's a Monday, so it's kind of a bummer, but thank you. He watches all the meetings, so happy anniversary, Matt.
Very good. Should we do a proclamation for that the next meeting, or anything of that nature?
We could always use more proclamations.
We do. We certainly would. Councilwoman, I'm just teasing, so hope we remain friends. Thank you very much. Anyone else? And anything else, Mr. City Manager, to wrap up?
Nothing tonight, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. With that being said, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.